The massive space station rotated slowly in the void, its silver surface catching the light from 3 distant suns. Inside the main council chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their designated areas, waiting for the meeting to begin. The air hummed with different languages and the soft clicks of translation devices. Ambassador Thren of the Kithara shifted in his floating chair, his long blue fingers drumming against the armrest. His large black eyes focused on the entrance as the human delegation walked through the doors. 3 humans moved across the polished floor with what every alien in the room considered typical human slowness. David Walsh led the group, his brown hair slightly messy from the journey. Behind him walked Dr. Lisa Park, carrying a datapad, and Captain Tom Rivers in his simple gray uniform. They took their seats at the far end of the chamber, and David nodded politely to the other delegates. "Counselor." Vix leaned toward her companion, her crystal skin reflecting the blue light from the ceiling. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the translation device picked it up anyway. "Look at them move like old creatures from some ancient world. How did they ever build spaceships?" The Helix representative, a collection of small silver beings that moved as one, made a sound like wind chimes. Perhaps they had help from more advanced species. It would explain much about their technology. Commander Rex of the Vortani stood at the center of the chamber, his 4 arms spreading wide as he called the meeting to order. His red skin gleamed under the lights, and his voice boomed across the space. "We gather today to discuss the crisis at Frontier Mining Station. Enemy ships have been attacking our supply convoys for 3 weeks. We have lost 12 ships and over 200 lives." The chamber filled with concerned murmurs. The Kithara delegate spoke first, his words coming so fast that the translation devices struggled to keep up. "Our calculations show 17 possible attack vectors. We can deploy defensive grids in 4.7 minutes if we act now." The Helix Collective responded as one voice, their words overlapping in perfect harmony. "Our shared consciousness has analyzed all known pirate tactics. We recommend immediate deployment of fast-strike vessels to eliminate the threat." Other species added their voices to the discussion, each speaking quickly and efficiently. The Zentari offered their plasma weaponry, the Drex proposed their stealth technology, and the Mallory suggested their shield generators. Everyone had a solution, and everyone wanted to act immediately. David Walsh raised his hand slowly, and the chamber gradually fell quiet. When he spoke, his words came at what the aliens considered a painfully slow pace. "We need more information about these raiders before we can make any decisions. What kind of ships are they using? How many fighters do they have? What are their attack patterns?" The silence that followed was broken by frustrated clicks and whistles from around the chamber. Thren's large eyes narrowed as he stared at the human. "Time is something we do not have, Ambassador Walsh. While you ask for more data, more ships are dying." Vix made a sound like breaking glass. "This is exactly what we expected from humans. They think and move like creatures stuck in thick mud. By the time they finish analyzing, the pirates will have destroyed half the sector." Captain Rivers leaned forward slightly. "With respect, Counselor, we believe that acting without proper information could make things worse. What if these aren't random pirates? What if someone is testing our defenses?" The Vortani commander's 4 arms gestured dismissively. "Humans always complicate simple problems. See enemy, destroy enemy. This is not difficult." Dr. Park spoke up, her voice steady but still slow by alien standards. "In our experience, rushing into combat without understanding the situation leads to unnecessary casualties. We've learned this lesson many times throughout our history." A new voice entered the discussion from the back of the chamber. "Perhaps the humans are simply too slow to understand the urgency of the situation." The speaker was Zil, the Kithara military advisor. Her movements were like lightning as she stood, her form blurring with speed. "We process information in nanoseconds. We make decisions faster than most species can even think. Maybe humans are just not built for rapid response." The comment sparked a wave of agreement from the other delegates. The Helix Collective hummed in harmony while the Vortani made sounds of approval. Even the normally quiet Zentari clicked their agreement. David Walsh sat quietly through the criticism, his face showing no emotion. When the chamber finally quieted, he spoke again. "We understand your concerns about our pace, but we've found that careful planning saves lives in the long run." Commander Rex stood again, his red skin darkening with frustration. "Careful planning is useful, but only if you can execute it quickly enough to matter. These pirates are not going to wait for human committees to reach consensus." The meeting continued for another hour, with various species proposing different solutions. The Kithara wanted to deploy their fastest ships immediately. The Helix suggested using their collective consciousness to coordinate a system-wide response. The Vortani proposed a massive show of force to scare the pirates away. Through it all, the humans listened carefully, asked questions, and took notes. To the other species, this looked like exactly what they expected from humans: slow, methodical, and hopelessly behind the pace of galactic civilization. As the meeting ended, delegates began filing out of the chamber. The humans remained in their seats, apparently still discussing something among themselves. Thren paused at the doorway, looking back at them with something between pity and annoyance. "They will still be talking when the next convoy is attacked," he said to Vix as they walked down the corridor. "It is unfortunate," she replied. "They have some useful technologies, but they are simply too slow to be effective partners in situations like this." Behind them, the human delegation finally stood and began walking toward the exit. David Walsh moved with the same unhurried pace that had frustrated the other delegates, but his eyes were alert, taking in every detail of the station around them. As they reached their quarters, Captain Rivers turned to his companions. "They really think we're slow, don't they?" Dr. Park smiled slightly. "They're measuring the wrong things. They see how we talk in meetings and think that's how we respond to everything." David Walsh looked out the window at the stars beyond. "Maybe it's time they learned the difference between being slow and being careful. If these pirates are as dangerous as they say, they might get that chance sooner than they think." The three humans continued their discussion as the station rotated slowly through space, carrying delegates from dozens of species who had never seen what happened when humans stopped being careful and started being fast. The next morning brought news that made the entire station tense with anxiety. 3 more supply ships had been destroyed during the night, and the pirates had left no survivors. The attacks were becoming bolder, and the enemy seemed to know exactly when and where the convoys would be traveling. Commander Rex called an emergency meeting in the main chamber. His forearms moved with agitation as he addressed the assembled delegates. "This cannot continue. We must take action immediately, or we will lose control of the entire sector." The various species began offering their solutions again, each speaking faster than before. The urgency was clear in their voices, and the translation devices worked overtime to keep up with the rapid discussions. David Walsh and his team entered the chamber and took their seats quietly. The other delegates barely glanced at them, having already dismissed the humans as too slow to contribute anything useful to the crisis. Zil, the Kithara military advisor, stood near the center of the chamber. Her movements were so fast that she seemed to flicker between positions. "We have the fastest ships in the galaxy. We can respond to any attack within minutes. But we need authority to act without waiting for committee approval." The Helix Collective spoke in perfect unison, their silver forms moving like a single organism. "Our shared consciousness allows us to coordinate responses across multiple systems simultaneously. We can track these pirates wherever they go." Commander Rex nodded approvingly at both suggestions. Then his eyes fell on the human delegation and his expression changed. "Of course, we welcome input from all council members, even those who prefer to move at a more leisurely pace." The comment drew quiet laughter from several species. David Walsh looked up from his notes, his face calm and patient. "We appreciate being included in the discussion, Commander. We do have some experience with this type of situation." Vix made her crystal laugh sound. "Experience gained very slowly, no doubt. Tell us, Ambassador Walsh, how long does it take humans to decide what to have for breakfast. More laughter rippled through the chamber. The humans had become something of a running joke among the other species, known for their deliberate speech and careful consideration of even simple matters. Commander Rex raised one of his arms for silence. Perhaps it is time we demonstrated why the Galactic Defense Initiative has never included human forces in rapid response scenarios. We have training facilities here on the station that can simulate combat conditions. The chamber fell quiet as the implications became clear. Rex continued, his voice growing more confident. I propose a competition. Each species will send their best representative to complete a series of combat simulations. We will test reaction time, decision-making speed, and combat reflexes under pressure. Zill's form blurred with excitement. An excellent idea. The Kithara can process visual information in nanoseconds. Our champion can demonstrate proper combat speed. The Helix Collective hummed in agreement. Our representative shares consciousness with thousands of minds. Reaction time becomes irrelevant when you can predict actions before they happen. Other species began volunteering their champions. The Vortani would send their fastest warrior. The Zentari offered their best pilot. The Drex proposed their stealth specialist. All eyes turned to the human delegation. David Walsh looked at his companions. Then back at the assembled aliens. We accept the challenge. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. They had expected the humans to decline, claiming they needed more time to prepare or analyze the situation. Commander Rex seemed almost disappointed that the humans had agreed so quickly. Very well. We will use the station's advanced training facility. The simulations will test basic reflexes, combat awareness, and tactical decision-making under extreme pressure. Zill moved to the center of the chamber with her characteristic speed. This should be educational for everyone. Perhaps the humans will learn something about the pace required for effective military action. Dr. Park stood slowly, her movements deliberate and measured. We're always interested in learning from other species. This should be very informative. The arrangements were made quickly. The competition would take place in 3 hours, giving each species time to prepare their champion. The training facility would be configured to provide an objective measure of reaction times and combat effectiveness. As the meeting broke up, the aliens gathered in small groups to discuss the upcoming demonstration. Most were excited to see their champions perform, while others were curious about how badly the humans would fail. Thren approached Vix as they left the chamber. This seems almost cruel. The humans will be embarrassed in front of the entire council. Vix's crystal surface reflected her amusement. Perhaps it will finally convince them that they are not suited for military roles. They can continue their slow diplomacy and leave the fighting to those who are actually capable. Meanwhile, the human delegation walked quietly toward their quarters. Captain Rivers waited until they were alone before speaking. Are you sure about this, David? They're not wrong about their capabilities. Zill can move faster than our eyes can track, and the Helix Collective can process information at incredible speeds. David Walsh looked thoughtful. They're measuring the wrong things, Tom. They see speed of movement and think that's the same as speed of reaction. They've never seen what happens when we stop holding back. Dr. Park nodded. They're judging us based on how we behave in diplomatic situations, but diplomacy and combat are very different things. They reached their quarters and began preparing for the competition. David Walsh made a simple request that puzzled the station's AI. I need to review the safety protocols for the training facility, all of them. The AI responded immediately. The safety protocols are extensive. Ambassador Walsh, are you concerned about injury during the simulation? David smiled. Not injury to me. I want to make sure the facility can handle what's about to happen. 3 hours later, the main training facility was packed with observers. Representatives from every species on the station had come to watch the competition. The facility itself was impressive, a large chamber filled with holographic projectors, force field generators, and advanced AI systems capable of creating realistic combat scenarios. The champions from each species stood ready, Zil appeared as a blur of motion even when standing still. The Helix representative, known as Node Prime, moved with the perfect coordination of 1,000 minds. The Vortani warrior, Kex, flexed his forearms and checked his equipment. David Walsh stood at the end of the line, looking completely relaxed. He had removed his diplomatic jacket and wore a simple black shirt and pants. To the observers, he looked exactly like what they expected, a slow, careful human who was about to be thoroughly outclassed. Commander Rex addressed the crowd. Today we will see demonstrations of the fastest reaction times and most effective combat techniques in the galaxy. Our champions will face increasingly difficult challenges designed to test the limits of speed and reflexes. He paused and looked at David Walsh. We will also see why some species are better suited for combat roles than others. The human simply nodded, still looking completely at ease. What none of the observers realized was that David Walsh had spent the last 3 hours doing something that would have confused them completely. He had been slowing down his breathing, relaxing his muscles, and entering a state of calm readiness that his people had been perfecting for thousands of years. As the competition was about to begin, Dr. Park leaned close to Captain Rivers. They have no idea what they're about to see. The training facility's AI announced the first challenge. Participants will face a series of energy projectiles fired from random positions. Objective is to avoid all incoming fire while maintaining position within the designated area. The champions took their positions, each confident in their abilities. The observers watched eagerly, ready to see their representatives demonstrate superior alien reflexes. What happened next would change everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about humans. The training facility hummed with energy as the first challenge began. Red targeting lasers swept across the chamber, and the AI announced that the test would commence in 10 seconds. The alien champions prepared themselves, each displaying their species' natural advantages. Zil's form began to blur even more as her nervous system accelerated to combat speed. The Kithara could process visual information so quickly that the world seemed to slow down around her. She could see the energy building in the weapon systems and calculate trajectory paths before the shots were even fired. Node-Prime stood perfectly still. But the observers could see the faint shimmer around him that indicated active connection to the Helix Collective. Thousands of minds were now focused on this single task, sharing processing power and predictive algorithms. The collective consciousness could analyze patterns and predict outcomes with near-perfect accuracy. Kex flexed his forearms and shifted into a combat stance that looked like a dance. The Vortani warrior had reflexes that made hummingbirds look slow, and his four-armed anatomy gave him movement options that other species could barely imagine. David Walsh stood quietly in his designated area, his breathing steady and relaxed. To the observers, he looked almost bored. His hands hung loose at his sides, and he showed none of the visible preparation that marked the other champions. The AI countdown reached 0, and the first wave of energy projectiles launched from hidden positions around the chamber. The alien champions responded exactly as expected, each demonstrating the superior capabilities of their species. Zil moved like lightning, her form flickering between positions as she dodged the incoming fire. Her movements were so fast that the observers could barely follow them, and she seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Every shot passed harmlessly through space. She had occupied nanoseconds before. Node Prime didn't move quickly, but he didn't need to. The collective consciousness had predicted every shot, and he simply stepped aside or ducked with perfect timing. His movements were economical and precise, guided by the shared knowledge of 1,000 minds. Kex turned the exercise into an art form, his forearms deflecting shots while his body twisted through impossible angles. He made it look like a dance, graceful and flowing, as if the energy beams were partners rather than weapons. David Walsh did something that confused everyone watching. He didn't blur like Zil or move with collective precision like Node Prime. He didn't deflect shots like Kex or show any of the dramatic responses they expected. Instead, he simply moved with a smooth, flowing motion that seemed almost casual. What the observers didn't understand was that David was never where the shots were aimed. He didn't dodge the energy beams so much as flow around them, his body, moving in patterns that seemed to anticipate the weapons before they fired. His movements were subtle, economical, and strangely hypnotic. The first wave ended, and the AI announced the results. The chamber fell silent as the numbers appeared on the display screens around the facility. Kithara Champion reaction time? 0.003 seconds. Helix Representative reaction time? 0.002 seconds. Vortani Warrior reaction time? 0.001 seconds. The observers murmured approvingly. These were exactly the results they expected, demonstrating the superior reflexes and processing power of the advanced species. Human Representative reaction time, 0.0008 seconds. The chamber went completely quiet. Several delegates checked their translation devices, thinking they had misheard. Commander Rex stared at the display, his forearms moving in confusion. Then's large black eyes widened in disbelief. That cannot be correct. Run the test again. The AI responded immediately. All measurements were verified through multiple sensor arrays. The results are accurate. Vix's crystal surface flickered with uncertainty. There must be an error in the human measurement system. Their equipment might be calibrated differently. Dr. Park stood in the observation area, her expression carefully neutral. Our equipment uses the same galactic standard measurements as everyone else. There's no difference in calibration. Commander Rex's voice boomed across the chamber. Run the test again. Use backup sensors for verification. The second wave of projectiles began immediately, this time coming from more positions and at higher speeds. The alien champions responded with the same impressive displays of their species' abilities. But now everyone was watching the human more carefully. David Walsh moved through the second wave with the same flowing motion as before. His movements seemed almost choreographed, as if he were dancing to music only he could hear. He twisted and turned through the energy field, each motion perfectly timed to avoid destruction. The observers began to notice something strange. While the alien champions were reacting to the shots after they were fired, David seemed to be moving before the weapons even activated. His body would shift position just as a targeting laser appeared, and he would be gone before the energy beam arrived. The second wave ended, and the AI announced results that made the chamber erupt in confused chatter. Kithara Champion maintains previous performance levels. Helix Representative shows slight improvement. Vortani Warrior demonstrates consistent results. Human Representative maintains superior performance metrics. Commander Rex's red skin darkened with frustration. This is impossible. Humans are the slowest species in the galaxy. They think slowly, they move slowly, they react slowly. These results make no sense. Zill appeared next to the commander with her characteristic speed. Perhaps the human is using some kind of enhancement technology. Artificial reflexes or predictive computers. The facility's AI spoke without being asked. All participants have been scanned for technological enhancements. No artificial augmentation detected in any competitor. Node Prime spoke with the voice of the collective. The human's neural patterns are unlike anything in our databases. His brain activity suggests processing methods that we do not understand. Captain Rivers stepped forward from the observation area. There's nothing artificial about David's performance. What you're seeing is natural human capability. The alien delegates erupted in protests and disbelief. The idea that humans could outperform their species in any measure of speed or reflexes challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Commander, Rex raised his arms for silence. We will continue with the full series of tests. If these results are genuine, we need to understand what we're dealing with. The third challenge was announced: multiple simultaneous threats with environmental hazards. The difficulty level increased dramatically, with energy weapons, physical obstacles, and time pressure all combined into a single scenario. The alien champions prepared themselves for the ultimate test of their abilities. Each drew on their species' greatest advantages, pushing their natural capabilities to the limit. David Walsh simply closed his eyes for a moment. took a deep breath, and stepped into position. When he opened his eyes, something had changed. The casual, relaxed expression was gone, replaced by a focused intensity that none of the observers had ever seen in a human before. As the third challenge began, the watching delegates were about to witness something that would force them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about human limitations. The slow, careful diplomats they had dismissed were about to show their true nature, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The energy weapons charged, the obstacles moved into position, and David Walsh prepared to demonstrate. What happened when humans stopped being diplomatic and started being dangerous? The third challenge was unlike anything the training facility had ever generated. The chamber transformed into a deadly maze of moving obstacles, hidden weapons, and environmental hazards that would test every aspect of combat capability. Energy barriers shifted position every few seconds. Gravity fields randomly intensified and weakened, and hostile projections appeared from multiple directions simultaneously. The alien champions stood at the starting line, each drawing on their species' greatest evolutionary advantages. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the chance to demonstrate why their civilizations had dominated galactic military affairs for centuries. Zill's nervous system accelerated to maximum combat speed, her form becoming a barely visible blur of motion. The Kithara had evolved on a world where lightning-fast predators hunted in packs, and their reflexes had been honed by millions of years of survival pressure. She could process visual information faster than most species could even register it. Node-Prime established deeper connection with the Helix Collective, and suddenly thousands of minds were focused on this single challenge. The collective consciousness began analyzing every possible outcome, calculating probabilities, and sharing tactical information instantaneously. They had the processing power of a supercomputer. Distributed across a living network, Kex entered a combat trance that made his four arms move independently, each one capable of responding to different threats simultaneously. The Vortani warrior had trained for decades to reach this level of coordination, and his species' natural advantages in spatial awareness and multi-limb control made him nearly unstoppable in close combat. David Walsh stood quietly at his starting position, his breathing steady and his eyes closed. To the observers, he looked like he was meditating rather than preparing for the most challenging combat simulation the station could generate. The AI announced the parameters of the challenge. Full combat scenario with multiple attackers, environmental hazards, and split-second life-or-death decisions. Participants must reach the center of the chamber while avoiding all threats. Failure results in immediate elimination. Commander Rex watched from the observation deck, his four arms crossed as he studied the human. This will end the discussion about human capabilities once and for all. No species can succeed in this scenario without superior reflexes and processing speed. The countdown began, and the alien champions prepared to demonstrate their superiority. The observers held their breath as the final seconds ticked away. David Walsh opened his eyes, and something fundamental had changed. The diplomatic patience was gone, replaced by something primal and dangerous. His posture shifted subtly, his weight moving to the balls of his feet, his hands positioning themselves for action. In that moment, he looked less like a careful diplomat and more like an apex predator. The challenge began with explosive force. Energy weapons fired from hidden positions, gravity fields fluctuated wildly, and hostile projections materialized throughout the chamber. The alien champions responded with impressive displays of their species' capabilities. Zill became a streak of motion, her form flickering between positions as she navigated the deadly obstacles. Her speed was so great that she seemed to exist in multiple places at once, and the weapons couldn't track her movement patterns. Node-Prime moved with perfect coordination, guided by the collective consciousness of thousands of minds. Every step was calculated, every movement predicted, and every threat anticipated before it materialized. Kex turned the challenge into a deadly dance, his four arms working independently to deflect energy beams while his body twisted through impossible angles to avoid the moving obstacles. David Walsh Did something that defied everything the observers thought they knew about physics, biology, and the nature of reaction time itself. He didn't just navigate the course, he dominated it with a fluid grace that seemed to bend the rules of space and time. His movements were unlike anything the facility had ever recorded. Where the alien champions relied on speed or collective processing, David moved with an instinctive flow that seemed to anticipate threats before they existed. He dove under plasma fire that hadn't been fired yet, rolled away from explosions that were still charging, and engaged projected enemies. Before they had fully materialized, the facility's AI began having difficulty maintaining the scenario. David was completing objectives faster than the system could generate them, moving through the course with such efficiency that the computer had to continuously adjust its parameters to keep up. Commander Rex stared at the displays in disbelief. This is impossible. No organic being can move with that kind of predictive accuracy. Dr. Park stood next to him, her expression carefully controlled. You're watching something that evolution spent millions of years perfecting. Humans didn't develop as a technologically advanced species first. We developed as survivors. On the course, David demonstrated capabilities that the galaxy had never seen before. His neural activity showed patterns that didn't match any known species profile. His brain wasn't just processing information faster, it was processing information that shouldn't have been available yet. The monitoring systems revealed the truth about what was happening. David's subconscious was calculating trajectories, predicting movement patterns, and responding to threats on a level that transcended normal reaction time. His body was moving before his conscious mind had even registered the danger. Zill, despite her incredible speed, began falling behind. Her movements were fast, but they were reactive. She had to see the threat before she could respond to it. Node-Prime, with all the processing power of the collective, started making errors. The shared consciousness was analyzing possibilities, but David was already responding to realities that hadn't occurred yet. Kex's four-armed coordination couldn't match the fluid integration of David's entire nervous system. The human moved like a single, perfectly coordinated organism, every muscle fiber working in harmony. As the challenge intensified, the differences became more pronounced. The alien champions were impressive, but they were still bound by the limitations of reactive thinking. David had moved beyond reaction into something that approached precognition. The facility's weapons couldn't target him effectively because he was never where they predicted he would be. The obstacles couldn't block his path because he was already moving around them before they shifted position. The hostile projections couldn't engage him because he was eliminating them. Before they completed their attack routines, the course reached maximum difficulty, and the AI announced that it was operating beyond normal parameters. The system was generating threats as fast as it possibly could, but David was neutralizing them faster than they could be deployed. When the simulation finally ended, David Walsh stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the deactivated remains of every challenge the facility could generate. His breathing was slightly elevated, but he showed no signs of exhaustion or stress. The alien champions were scattered throughout the course, each stopped by obstacles that David had seemingly ignored. They had performed admirably by any previous standard, but the human had redefined what was possible. The chamber fell completely silent as the results appeared on the displays. The numbers didn't just show superior performance, they showed capabilities that challenged the fundamental assumptions about human limitations. Commander Rex's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" David Walsh looked up at the observation deck, his eyes still carrying that dangerous intensity. "We're what you get when a species spends millions of years learning to survive against impossible odds. You've been measuring our peacetime behavior and thinking that's all we are." The galaxy was about to learn that humans had been holding back far more than anyone had ever imagined. The slow, careful diplomats were about to reveal their true nature, and the universe would never be the same. The silence in the observation chamber stretched for long moments as the alien delegates stared at the displays showing David Walsh's impossible performance. The numbers on the screens seemed to mock everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Commander Rex's forearms trembled slightly as he processed what he had witnessed. Thren was the first to speak, his large black eyes fixed on the human standing calmly in the center of the training facility. There must be some explanation for this. Humans cannot possess such capabilities while appearing so slow in all other aspects of their behavior. The facility's AI provided immediate analysis. All sensor readings confirm that the human participant achieved performance levels that exceed previously recorded maximums for any known species. No technological enhancement or artificial augmentation was detected. Vix's crystal surface flickered, with confusion and something that might have been fear. If humans possess such abilities, why do they move so slowly in diplomatic situations? Why do they speak so deliberately and take so long to make decisions? Dr. Park stepped forward, her expression serious but patient. That's exactly what we need to explain. You've been measuring the wrong things about our species. You see our careful speech, our methodical decision-making, our deliberate approach to problems, and you assume we're slow. But you've never seen us when we're actually threatened. She gestured toward David Walsh, who was walking slowly toward the exit of the training facility, his movements once again appearing unhurried and casual. What you just witnessed wasn't special training or genetic modification. That was normal. Human capability when we stop conserving energy and start responding to real danger. Commander Rex's red skin had darkened to almost purple. This makes no sense. If humans possess such reflexes, why aren't they the dominant military force in the galaxy? Why do they serve in diplomatic roles instead of combat positions? Captain. Rivers joined the discussion, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen actual combat. Because we learned a long time ago that our greatest strength isn't in fighting, it's in knowing when not to fight. The abilities you just saw are what we use when diplomacy fails and survival is at stake. Dr. Park activated a holographic display showing human evolutionary history. We evolved as both hunters and prey animals simultaneously. We had to run down massive creatures over vast distances, but we also had to avoid becoming dinner for predators that were faster and stronger than us. The display showed early humans' persistence hunting across vast grasslands, chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. Then it shifted to show the same humans hiding from massive predators, using intelligence and quick reflexes to survive encounters with creatures that should have killed them easily. Our slowness in social situations is actually energy conservation. Dr. Park continued. We learn to save our strength for when we really need it. Speaking slowly and thinking carefully isn't a limitation. It's a survival strategy that keeps us ready for moments of crisis. The display changed to show human neural activity during different states. The observers could see the dramatic difference between normal human brain function and the patterns that had been recorded during David's performance in the training facility. When threatened, our brains don't just speed up, they enter a state where time perception changes, Dr. Park explained. We call it being in the zone or flow state. Our athletes tap into it during competition. Our soldiers use it in combat, and our emergency responders rely on it during crisis situations. Zill appeared next to the display with her characteristic speed, but for the first time, her movements seemed less impressive than they had before. This flow state you describe, it allows humans to predict future events? David Walsh entered the observation chamber, his diplomatic demeanor restored but his eyes still alert. Not prediction exactly. It's more like our subconscious processes information faster than our conscious mind can understand. We respond to patterns and possibilities that we sense but can't always explain. He looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. You judge us by our peacetime behavior, but humans have never been a peacetime species. We've been fighting something or someone for our entire evolutionary history. Those reflexes you witnessed are what we developed to survive in a universe that was constantly trying to kill us. Node Prime spoke with the voice of the collective. But if humans possess such capabilities, why do they seem so unprepared for military action? Why do they request more information instead of acting immediately? David smiled, and for the first time the expression didn't look slow or harmless. Because we learned that the most dangerous enemy is the one you don't understand. We ask questions not because we're slow, but because we're thorough. When we finally act, we want to be sure we're acting against the right target. Commander Rex's voice was subdued. Are you saying that humans have been deliberately concealing their true capabilities? Captain Rivers shook his head. We haven't been concealing anything. We've just never had a reason to demonstrate our full potential. The galaxy has been peaceful, and we prefer it that way. Dr. Park added, You've been measuring us during our rest state. It's like judging a sleeping lion by how slowly it breathes. The implications of this revelation began to sink in throughout the chamber. Military advisors were already recalculating defense strategies. Trade negotiators were reassessing human industrial capabilities. And in the depths of space, automated systems were beginning to broadcast updates about human combat potential. Thren approached David with something that looked like newfound respect mixed with caution. If this is true, then our entire understanding of human psychology and capabilities has been wrong. How many other species have we misjudged? David's expression became more serious. That's a good question. But right now we have a more immediate problem. Those raiders attacking the supply convoys, they've been monitoring our communications. They know about this demonstration. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Commander Rex's forearms gestured urgently. How do you know this? Captain Rivers stepped forward. Because while you've been focused on our reflexes, we've been tracking their signal patterns. They've been using quantum communication channels that most species can't detect. But humans developed similar technology decades ago. Dr. Park activated another display showing communication intercepts. They're not random pirates. They're scouts for something much larger. They've been testing our response times and measuring our capabilities. The alien delegates stared at the data in growing alarm. The attacks on the supply convoys hadn't been random raids. They had been carefully planned. Intelligence gathering operations. David Walsh looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. They expected us to respond with standard galactic military doctrine. Fast deployment, overwhelming force, predictable tactics. Instead, they got something they weren't prepared for. Commander Rex's voice was tight with concern. What do you mean? David's smile was no longer diplomatic. They were monitoring our communications when we accepted your challenge. They watched the entire demonstration. Right now, they're trying to figure out what they just witnessed. The chamber's communication system suddenly activated without being prompted. The facility's AI announced, incoming priority transmission from the Frontier Mining Station. All hostile activity has ceased. The raider fleet is withdrawing from the sector. A new voice entered the conversation, the station commander's report crackling through the speakers. Unknown ships are retreating at maximum speed. They're broadcasting surrender codes and requesting safe passage out of the system. The alien delegates looked at each other in confusion. The raiders had been attacking aggressively for weeks. But now they were running away after a single demonstration of human capabilities. David Walsh stood quietly for a moment, then spoke with the calm authority of someone who understood exactly what had happened. They came here expecting to fight the slow, careful humans they had observed in diplomatic situations. Instead, they got a glimpse of what we're capable of when we stop being diplomatic. Commander Rex's voice was barely a whisper. You're saying they retreated because of what they saw in the training facility? Captain Rivers nodded. They've been studying galactic military doctrine for months, learning our patterns and capabilities. But they had no data on human combat potential because we've never needed to use it. Dr. Park added, now they're facing the unknown. They can't calculate odds against capabilities they don't understand. For a species that relies on careful planning and superior intelligence, that's terrifying. The chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. The galaxy's perception of humanity had changed completely in the space of a single demonstration. The slow, careful diplomats were revealed to be patient predators who had been holding back their true nature. Friend spoke for many of the delegates when he said, "We will need to reconsider our approach to human relations. If this is what you're capable of when threatened, then perhaps our previous assumptions about human limitations were dangerously incorrect." David Walsh looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's windows. The universe is a dangerous place. We've learned to survive by being careful when we can, and deadly when we must. The question isn't whether humans are slow, it's whether you really want to see us move fast. As the alien delegates began to file out of the chamber, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had witnessed, the human delegation remained behind. They had work to do, reports to file, and communications to send back to Earth. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Across thousands of worlds, species that had dismissed humans as sluggish newcomers began to understand a fundamental truth about the universe. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that lets you think you're safe. And somewhere in the depths of space, the retreating raiders sent their own reports back to their masters, warning of a species that had been completely misjudged. The humans weren't slow at all, they were patient. And there was a crucial difference between the two that the galaxy was only beginning to understand.